Hello, my name's Jeff. Nice to meet you all. Anyone I've not met yet, I hope to get the chance to have a wee catch up before the end of today. You're about to meet and get to hear from a very cool panel doing a lot of very cool work. But I actually wanted to start by asking you all a question. Can I get you to put your hand in the air if you've ever participated in an archaeological dig or survey? Okay. I'd assumed this was going to be an engaged group. I didn't realise it was that engaged. What this panel is about is trying to see how we get that level of engagement, that with awesome archaeology, beyond these four walls. How do we involve other people with it? And all stages of archaeology. So let's kind of fly right in and start. I suppose the first question I kind of wanted to pitch to you all was, how do we get people better involved in actually doing archaeology? And maybe go to you first, Iain.
Scottish Stonemasons Marks project launched in 2019, and the objective then was to use the skills from community heritage organisations to survey buildings and record stonemasons marks. We've worked with ACFA, Field Archaeology for All, Clutha Archaeology and Edinburgh Archaeological Field Society. There's been a slight change in direction in the last 12 months or so, supported by Historic Scotland and an organisation with the slightly confusing name of Make Your Mark. And Make Your Mark is about engaging communities and individuals with heritage. And they focus to a great extent on engaging with what have been known as non-engaged groups. Those who would not normally consider themselves to be the sort of organisation or the sort of people who would engage with heritage. And I've been working recently with an organisation in Edinburgh called Access to Industry. And Access to Industry provides support for people who are long-term unemployed. So Access to Industry have offered participation to 10 individuals who came along to Glasgow Cathedral, and they just got it straight away. And I'm the first to admit that Mason's marks are a little bit Marmite, but they got it, and then they came to Linlithgow, and they've surveyed Linlithgow. We've done Craigmillar Castle. They're going to go back and conduct a formal survey. And then they're also going to write or prepare a leaflet about the stonemasons marks at Craigmillar. And the changes in outlook from these individuals has been quite amazing. One of them said to their project officer at Access to Industry, "I can't believe people want to come and spend time with us." And that gives you some indication of the impact of long-term unemployment on individuals' morale, perhaps on their self-esteem, and so on and so forth. And to be involved in a project like this, and also to have some responsibility, has done an enormous amount for them. And that can be relatively easy repeated across the heritage sector. And it's not unique. Archaeology Scotland did a wonderful project at Hampden, which I'm sure many of you, you'll all have heard of Hampden, but you won't have heard of the excavations to find the original Hampden Park. It wasn't a grandstand, it was a clubhouse. And they worked with Refuigi and the Scottish Refugee Council, because you don't need to speak English if you're into football. Everybody understands, Rangers 0, Celtic 3. It's, or the other way around. Sorry, I should have said Hibs and Hearts, because that's, so I'm in Edinburgh.
Well, do you have any tips in terms of, I'm guessing this was the first time you'd reached that audience?
It was, yes. Make Your Mark is the answer, because they plug into all these organisations. Volunteering Scotland is another way in, and talk to the university, talk to the department, history and archaeology, and find out what projects they've got that they're running that and engage with the public. I mean, Govan Old is a classic example. You know, they had 1,000 people in one day come and see what was going on. And if just 1%, 1% turn up, that's an extra 10 people involved in the project, which is just fantastic.
Yeah. I don't know if, throwing it open to the rest of the panel, I don't know if you've got any kind of good examples or things you'd highlight in terms of, you know, how we get better at involving more people in archaeology. So maybe it'll be something we come on afterwards. I don't know if anyone actually knows Make Your Mark. It's a campaign to increase the number and diversity of heritage volunteers. Please do check out their website and sign up to their e-newsletter. I thought maybe then I'll maybe ask another question, if that's okay. I'm assuming most people have been to the National Museum just across the road. Can you put your hand in the air if your favourite gallery is the Early People's Gallery? That's the one just downstairs. Okay, that's a good number. Again, surprised, but pleasantly so. This will tie into something, honestly. So what I then wanted to kind of look at was to ask the panel was how can we best share the results of archaeological work? How do we kind of bake that in? And I was maybe wanting to go to Lucille on this one.
Yeah, happy to talk about that. I should say before I talk about my own project that we've had some fantastic examples already of how to do that. So I feel like I'm very much preaching to the choir here. But yeah, with respect to my own PhD project, which is called Finding Time for the Mesolithic, assessing the value of Scotland's Mesolithic stone tools as a heritage resource. The plan for the PhD, because I'm only in my first year, is that after I've done that research to really try and share it as widely as possible. So there's a few ways that we're trying to, or that I'd like to kind of share that research. And I've certainly been inspired by the things that we've heard today as well. But that will include at the end of the project, hopefully the findings being put towards any sort of future redesign of National Museum's Early People's Gallery. I think it's a feature of most galleries in sort of British museums. The Mesolithic doesn't always feature too heavily, and hopefully by the end of the project we'll have a lot more kind of updated information on the Scottish Mesolithic in specific that can be used to kind of update a lot of narratives that we currently have on display. Aside from that, I'm hoping to also develop and lead a series of talks and workshops as well. So sharing the results of my research, but also going beyond that. I think that's really important. In fact, I was reading the late Don Henson's fantastic PhD thesis on the public perceptions of the Mesolithic. And he spoke about how we as archaeologists communicating with the public have a responsibility to not just share archaeological narratives, but actually go beyond that and directly engage with the public. And so you're not just kind of explaining, or I wouldn't be just explaining what the stone tools are and what I think of them, but how people can engage with them. And I think that's really important. Especially from my perspective, coming to archaeology through community archaeology, that was how I found out about the sector and got to where I am here. And I certainly think with stone tools, there's a kind of element, I don't know if anyone else will agree, they're kind of mystified a little bit. You can have someone tell you that a stone tool is, well, they can show it to you and tell you that it was used for this and that it is this. Sometimes it's quite hard just to, think for yourself. I wouldn't necessarily know that. And I think that there's a really valuable opportunity there with the workshops to sort of share skills like identifying stone tools, going into the basics of lithic analysis, where allowing people from any kind of walk of life to kind of gain that knowledge for themselves, and they can then go and think critically about any objects they see in the museums. And finally, I'll just say as well, it's especially important to me to share the results of what we're doing with the public and community archaeology groups, specifically because actually a lot of the assemblages I'm looking at have been excavated and field walked by community archaeology groups, so it's really important to feed that back. But yes.
And you're not originally from an archaeological background. You kind of took the stride in there. What was it that made you want to do this?
Well, I'd always wanted to be an archaeologist, which is the typical answer for anyone you ask. But it's true, I just didn't know it was a career. And obviously, in a lot of school systems, you can't study archaeology until you get to university level, so I did history instead. I was a little bit too scared to take on any archaeology modules, even though I could have done. But I was very lucky going into kind of heritage. I then saw sort of jobs, and then I found my local archaeology groups in Norfolk where I was based, so Case the Roman project. I did my first dig, and like anyone will know, it's totally fun and you just want to keep going. And that's where I got to hear about commercial archaeology, then found my course at UHI, and that's where I've got to now.
And I think that actually leads in to like another question I wanted to explore, is that leap. You know, how do we present archaeology in a way that makes people want to get involved, want to get and find out more, and then and then how do we help them?
Yeah. So one of the main ways that I've seen is probably is promotion of like different projects and working on that and making sure that the projects in themselves are marketed to the audiences that can accept, just marketing them to the audience that is the widest one and can get it. The first sort of thing that I want to talk about is just, I'm not an archaeologist, so that's my background is more computer science, but I'm working with Archaeology Scotland to do graphic design for different projects to sort of make sure that the language is a bit more simplified in certain things. So I have a quote that I want to show. It's like, so I got language barriers from the world's most famous archaeologist, Kendrick Lamar. No, it's a rapper, musician. But some of my work with Archaeology Scotland, it's sort of that quote that keeps running through my head, because when I was making those slides, it just sums up exactly the main issue and the main barrier, I would say, that's stopping people from getting involved, which is the language barriers. Because some of the language is can be quite dense, because I'm not from an archaeological background, so coming into the sector for the first time, and I started last year, August, so I've not been here for a while, but seeing how different parts of the sectors communicated and trying to be presented to different people. That way is just I just found that it could be done in a better way. So I have an example of from the projects that I've been helping Archaeology Scotland work with and do. This is called Adopt a Monument, which is an outreach project. So that project is basically about trying to just get more people involved in sort of adopting a monument in the archaeological sites, sort of getting them excited and interested and engaged in that. So the original version of like the material that they had, which hadn't been updated since 2009, as you can see, it's you'd probably all understand it perfectly, but as somebody who didn't know anything about archaeology coming in, some of the words were quite abstract, and I didn't know what they mean in certain contexts. In that specific context, like improving interpretation of a site. In that context, I didn't know what that meant, and same with like conservation. Also, the word scheme seems kind of nefarious, So it's like I was thinking, okay, there's a problem here with sort of how things are communicated. So how do we sort of simplify this without generalizing it? Because he wants to reach a wider audience. So next slide. Yeah. So this is about this is the newer version, the one that. So I helped rewrite some of their old material. I created new flyers and different promotional work for different projects, like this Adopt a Monument. This is the adjusted version. So instead of like talking about like things that are technical and sort of talking about the jargon, like interpretation, these words, I'm talking about things that are a bit more universal to the human experience, like storytelling, sharing your story. How do we do that? If you get involved with us, we can help get your site to you can present your site in a better way. So to sum it up, basically, the main point is just simplify without dumbing things down. Everyone has language barriers and things that it's knowledge gaps that need to be bridged, because in order to involve new people in the conversation, you have to try to bridge the gap, the things that they don't understand, so they can understand why it's worth being excited for, why it's worth engaging with, etc. So, and one of the ways you can sort of simplify things is just elaborate, explain what certain things mean, certain jargon, certain acronyms, and to involve, so that's just about involving new people. That's going to help, just elaborating and just making sure things are communicated in a way that is just succinct, and it's not full of just words that only people like within the field would know, because we're trying to reach a wider audience.
Thank you very much. And I think probably the first time on record that Kendrick Lamar has been mentioned in a Scottish Archaeology conference.
As he should.
Yeah, exactly. There's a first. Turning it back to you all again and asking you another question, can I get you to raise your hand if you've ever edited Wikipedia? Okay, good number. Not quite as high as for some of the other questions. And this kind of links into another little area I just wanted to kind of explore, which is, I mean, we've talked today about all of the amazing work already going on. There's some great work being done by Archaeology Scotland, the Society, Forestry and Land Scotland too, have some amazing resources. How do we acknowledge as well as celebrate the work of previous archaeologists? And I wanted to go to Joana on that one, particularly around Wikipedia.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. So recently, we as I say, as in me and Jeff, as well as some other fellows of the Society of Antiquaries, we have Becky Jones with us, we have Doug Rocks McQueen, we have Elliot Nell, who lives in America, and also Lucia Micheli. Sorry, Lucia, if I'm mispronouncing your name. But we got together to, and we started this project that we called Hidden Voices. And the voices that are hidden and that we are trying to elevate here are those of women archaeologists in Scotland, because we find that obviously archaeology has in its history is very focused on the work of men, and it has always been very directed towards men, although there were so many women today presenting amazing research. So obviously things have changed and are still changing. But we find that especially the early women archaeologists are not acknowledged enough, and we don't know enough about them. And one of the examples, a good example that I always think about is the women that are in the photographs of the excavation in Skara Brae from 1929, I think, that were presumably thought of as being tourists or just somebody, some people visiting. And a discussion on what used to be Twitter disclosed that they were actually archaeologists, and some of them are what we would call today the first women archaeologists in Scotland. So we figure that there is this big gap between their contribution and what we know of them and what we know of their role for Scottish archaeologists. Archaeology. So Jeff and Elliot had already started this Wikipedia editing process with Digit and the Society. And at some point, I was interested in kind of organizing an event that would be focusing on the contribution and the history of these women archaeologists. And we did put a bid together, which unfortunately we didn't get. But some of the bits that we had within this project proposal, we managed to carry on. And one of it was the organization of these lunchtime edits that we do every Thursday together. So the point is to edit existing Wikipedia pages of female Scottish archaeologists, but also create new ones. And so Lucia actually works at the Edinburgh Future Institute, and they are digitizing a lot of the early theses. So she data mined the database, and she came up with a list of all the women that are that have theses in this database. So we had a list to start with, and that's obviously this list has been growing since we started. But yeah, so that's what we've been doing on Thursdays for quite a few months now. We're also progressing to something else. We are now developing a podcast called Lunchtime Edits. Is that right? Yeah, keep forgetting the name of the podcast. And we've already recorded 3 episodes about the women that we are editing. So each episode is about one specific woman archaeologist, but also some of the issues that we encounter in this work, in this research that we are doing. Our first episode was about Diana Murray, president of the Society of Antiquaries of Scotland. Yeah, but we haven't launched officially yet. We will soon, hopefully. But yeah, so that's our Wikipedia. And I guess the reasoning behind using Wikipedia for this is because it's an online resource that is used by millions of people worldwide. And everyone, if you're searching for anything, I'm sure that you will look at Wikipedia because it's one of the first things that come up in your search, I'm sure. And also, you know the numbers better, but the representation between women and men in terms of archaeology is very different, isn't it?
Needs improved. So I think that would be like a core message is get involved. It's very easy to do, and it has an absolutely massive impact. And it's fun to do. We meet up online Thursday lunchtime, just from work.
It's a good break from that flow of work. We just have a 5-minute chat, and then we just go on to look for something else. And
it has a Zen-like quality.
I think so. Yeah.
We're almost out of time, but just really quickly then, panel, is there anything you'd want us to look at? Is there a website to plug, a thing to think about?
Yeah, the big advantage of the Masons Marks project is that it's extremely accessible. It doesn't require a lot of skills. It's very low tech, and it's non-destructive and non-invasive. And people can simply turn up, and you don't even need to bring a pencil because we've got some, and just have a go.
Perfect. Okay, so that's masonsmarks.scot. Yeah, check it out. Lucille, I imagine it'll be when you're finished your PhD in 3 years. We'll be hearing from you before then, I'm sure, in talks and the like. Josh?
Yeah, if you have any interest in Adopt a Monument, it's info@archaeologyscotland.org.uk. So you can get any information there, and we're going to be sending out some material, promotional material. So if you have any community groups or know anybody that could be interested in it, you can just reach out.
Cool. And Joana?
Well, I guess that we do have plans to open up our little group. So if anyone is interested in kind of, getting together virtually initially, maybe in person sometime, and do some research and some editing into some of the, amazing women archaeologists that we have and had in Scotland, then do get in touch. I'm sure that Jeff's email will be all over the flyers that you have on your hand. So, and we'd be interested to hearing from you.
Yeah. Awesome. And on that note then, a big thank you to you all, and can you give a big thank you to the panel?
Thank you.